Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Shri Krishnaya Paramatmane Namaga. Srimad Bhagavat Gita, Chapter 8, Akshara Brhma Yoga. Arjuna said, Krishna, what is that Brahman? What is Adhyatma? And what is Karma? What is called Adhibhuta and what is termed as Adhidaiva? Krishna, who is Adhiyajna here and how does he dwell in the body? And how are you to be realized at the time of death by those of steadfast mind? Sri Bhagavan said, the supreme indestructible is Brahman. One's own self is called Adhyatma, and the discharge of spirits which brings forth the existence of beings is called karma. All perishable objects are Adhibhuta. The shining Purusha, that is Brahman, is Adhidaiva. And in this body, I myself dwelling as the inner witness am Adhiyajna, O Arjuna. He who departs from the body, thinking of me alone, even at the time of death, attains my state. There is no doubt about it. Arjuna, thinking of whatever entity one leaves the body at the time of death, that and that alone one attains, being ever absorbed in its thought. Therefore, Arjuna, think of me at all times and fight. With mind and reason thus set on me, you will doubtless come to me. Arjuna, he who with his mind disciplined through yoga in the form of practice of meditation and thinking of nothing else is constantly engaged in contemplation of God attains the supremely effulgent divine Purusha. He who contemplates on the all-wise, ageless being, the ruler of all, subtler than the subtle, the universal sustainer, possessing a form beyond human conception, effulgent like the sun and far beyond the darkness of ignorance. Having by the power of yoga firmly held the life breath in the space between two eyebrows, even at the time of death, and then contemplating on God with a steadfast mind, full of devotion, he reaches verily that supreme divine Purusha. I shall tell you briefly about that supreme goal, which is an embodiment of truth, knowledge and bliss, which the knowers of the Veda term as the indestructible, which striving recluses free from passion enter, and desiring which the celibates practice brahmacharya. Having closed all the doors of the senses and firmly holding the mind in the cavity of the heart and then fixing the life breath in the head and thus remaining steadfast in yogic concentration on God, he who leaves the body and departs uttering the one indestructible Brahman, Om, and dwelling on me in my absolute aspect reaches the supreme goal. Arjuna, whosoever always and constantly thinks of me as undivided, with undivided mind, to that yogi ever absorbed in me, I am easily attainable. Great souls who have attained the highest perfection, having come to me, are no more subjected to rebirth, which is the abode of sorrow and transient by nature. Arjuna, all the worlds from Brahmaloka downwards are liable to appear and reappear, But O son of Kunti, on attaining me, there is no rebirth. Those yogis who know from realization Brahma's day as covering 1,000 Mahayugas and so his night as extending to another 1,000 Mahayugas know the reality about time. All embodied beings emanate from the unmanifest at the coming of the cosmic day. At the cosmic nightfall, they merge into the same subtle body of Brahma known as unmanifest. Arjuna, this multitude of beings being born again and again is dissolved under compulsion of its nature at the coming of the cosmic night and rises again at the commencement of the cosmic day. Far beyond even this unmanifest, there is yet another unmanifest existence, that supreme divine person who does not perish even though all beings perish. The same unmanifest which has been spoken of as the indestructible is also called the supreme goal. That again is my supreme abode, attaining which they return not to this mortal world. Arjuna, that eternal, unmanifest Supreme Purusha in whom all beings reside and by whom all this is pervaded, is attainable only through exclusive devotion. Arjuna, I shall now tell you the time. Arjuna, I shall now tell you the time departing when yogis do not return, and also the time departing when they do return. Of the two paths, the one is that in which are stationed the all-effulgent fire god and the deities presiding over daylight, the bright fortnight, and the 6 months of the northward course of the sun respectively. Proceeding along it after death, yogis who have known Brahman, being successively led by the above gods, finally reach Brahman. The other part is that wherein are stationed the gods presiding over smoke night, the dark fortnight, and the 6 months of the southward course of the sun. The yogi taking to this path after death is led by the above gods, one after another, and attaining the lustre of the moon and enjoying the fruit of his meritorious deeds in heaven, returns to this mortal world. For these two paths of the world, the bright and the dark are considered to be eternal. Proceeding by one of them, one reaches the supreme state from which there is no return, and proceeding by the other, one returns to the mortal world, becomes subject to birth and death once again. Knowing thus the secret of these two paths, O son of Kunti, no yogi gets deluded. Therefore, Arjuna, at all times be steadfast in yoga in the form of equanimity. The yogi, realizing this profound truth, doubtless transcends all the rewards enumerated for the study of the Vedas as well as for the performance of sacrifices, austerities and charities, and attains the supreme and primal state. Thus in the Upanishad sung by the Lord, the science of Brahman, the scripture of yoga, the dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna ends the 8th chapter entitled The Yoga of the Indestructible Brahman. The glories of chapter 8 of Srimad Bhagavat Gita from the Padma Purana. Lord Shiva said, "My dear Parvati, now please listen to the glories of the 8th chapter of Srimad Bhagavat Gita. After listening to this, you will feel great joy. In south is an important town of the name Amardkapur, in which one Brahmana of the name Bhava Sharma lived, who had taken a prostitute as his wife. Bhava Sharma enjoyed eating meat, drinking wine, stealing, going with others' wives, and hunting. One day that sinful Bhava Sharma was invited to a party where he drank so much alcohol that it started to come out of his mouth. After the party, he became very sick and suffered from chronic dysentery, and after many days of suffering, he died and attained the body of a date palm tree. One day, two Brhma Rakshas came and took shelter under the tree. Their previous life story was as follows. There was a Brahmana by the name Kushibhal who was very learned in the Vedas and had studied all branches of knowledge. His wife's name was Kumati, who was very evil-minded. Although that Brahmana was very well learned, he was also very greedy. Along with his wife, he used to collect a lot of charity every day, but he would never give charity to any other Brahmana. When their time came to die, they both attained the forms of Brahma Rakshasas. As Brahma Rakshasas, they continuously wandered here and there over the earth, suffering from hunger and thirst. One day they rested under that palm tree. At that time, the wife inquired the husband, how can we get free from this curse of being Brahma Rakshasas? He replied, by knowledge of Brahman, by knowledge of the self, by knowledge of fruitive activities. Without such knowledge, it is not possible to get free from our sinful reactions. Upon hearing this, the wife inquired, "Oh my Lord, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities?" Him tad Brahma kim adhyatmam kim karma purushottama. Completely by accident, the wife happened to chant half of the first shloka of the 8th chapter of Srimad Bhagavat Gita. At that time, having heard that half shloka, Bhava Sharma broke free from that form of tree and again attained the body of a Brahmana, completely free from all sin. Suddenly from the sky came a flower airplane which took that husband and wife back home, back to Godhead, Vaikuntha. Afterwards, that Brahmana, Bhava Sharma, with great respect, wrote down that half shloka, Kim tad Brahma, Kim adhyatmam, Kim karma purushottama, and with the intention of worshipping Lord Krishna, he went to Kashipuri and started performing great austerities while continuously chanting that half shloka. Meanwhile, in Vaikuntha, Lakshmi, seeing Lord Vishnu had risen suddenly from taking rest, inquired with folded hands, "Why have you risen so suddenly from your sleep?" Lord Vishnu said, "My dear Lakshmi, in Kashipuri on the bank of the river Ganges, my devotee is performing great austerities, continuously chanting half a shloka of the 8th chapter of Srimad Bhagavat Gita. For a long time I have been thinking how to award his devotion." Parvati inquired from Lord Shiva, when Lord Vishnu was so pleased with his devotee, what benediction did he bestow upon him? Lord Shiva said, Bhava Sharma went to Vaikuntha to engage in the eternal service of the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. Not only that, but all of his ancestors also attained the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. My dear Parvati, I have described to you just a little of the glories of the 8th chapter of Srimad Bhagavat Gita. Thus ends the 8th chapter of Srimad Bhagavat Gita. Shri Krishna 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 Krishna